Open a sealed bucket of kitchen scraps after a few warm days, and the lesson comes before you even look inside. The smell hits first. Not compost, not soil, more like swamp water and old food trapped in plastic. The banana peel is slick. The lettuce has collapsed into a wet layer. If there was cooked rice at the bottom, it may have turned into a foul, slimy paste. Now place the same kind of scraps in a different system. A bucket with the bottom removed, set into a garden bed, protected with a lid, covered inside with dry leaves, and connected to the soil below. Pull the mulch back later, and the smell should be different. Earthy, maybe faintly sour, but not rotten. That difference matters. The scraps did not become useful because they were scraps. They became useful because the conditions changed. In one bucket, food was sealed away from air and soil. In the other, it was placed where moisture, oxygen, microbes, fungi, and worms could work in order. But there is one warning before this sounds too easy. If that same banana peel is visible from above, you are not feeding worms first. You are advertising dinner to ants, flies, rats, raccoons, opossums, and anything that hunts by smell at night. So this method is not dump food in the garden. It is a controlled compost station, covered, not exposed, damp, not soaked, connected to soil, but protected from pests. When it works, the first sign is not giant plants. It is quieter. The scraps sink. The smell stays clean. The bottom layer darkens, and the soil around the lower edge starts to show small crumbs and castings instead of dry dust. Most gardeners already have the raw material for this system. It is sitting beside the sink. Carrot ends, apple cores, coffee grounds, eggshells, soft lettuce leaves, a few clean dry leaves from the yard, a piece of plain cardboard from a shipping box. In many homes, those materials leave the kitchen in a trash bag. Then the same gardener buys compost, soil conditioner, worm castings, or a compost activator because the bed still feels hard, dry, and tired. There is nothing wrong with buying good inputs when the garden needs them. A clean bag of compost can help. A balanced fertilizer can save a crop in the right situation. But if organic matter keeps leaving the property and the soil underneath never gets a steady compost pathway, the garden stays dependent on outside help. Sometimes the missing piece is not another product. It is a safe way for organic matter to stay in the garden long enough for biology to use it. That is where a bottomless compost station fits. It does not ask the whole bed to become a compost pile. It does not spread scraps across the surface. It does not bury fresh food directly under young roots. It creates one controlled feeding point inside the garden, where scraps can enter the soil system slowly, with cover, air, moisture, and protection. The goal is simple. Keep useful organic matter on the property without creating smell, pests, or root stress. The basic idea is simple. Use a container with no bottom. It can be an old nursery pot, a 5-gallon bucket with the base cut out, a short plastic bin, or a small wooden box. The sides hold the scraps in one place. The open bottom connects the station to the soil below. But in many American backyards, a loose bucket sitting on top of the bed is not good enough. If you have rats, raccoons, opossums, skunks, digging dogs, or heavy pest pressure, build the station as if something will try to get in. For any version, start by digging a shallow hole or trench 4 to 6 inches deep where the lower rim will sit. The container should not just balance on the surface. It needs to sit down into the bed. In low pest areas, set the open bottom container into that hole and press soil firmly around the outside edge. In pest-heavy areas, add one more step before setting it in place. Fasten 1/4-inch hardware cloth across the bottom opening of the container. Then set the container into the hole so the lower rim sits below the soil surface. Press soil firmly around the outside edge. The lid matters too. Use a lid that is secure, but not airtight. In high pest areas, a lid that clips or locks can help, but it still needs air. Drill a few small ventilation holes around the upper rim or upper sidewall of the container just below the lid line. About 1/8 inch is enough for airflow without creating a large opening. If tiny flies become a problem, cover those holes with fine mesh from the inside. This is the balance. Animals should not be able to flip the lid open, but the station should still breathe. The bottom mesh is also a trade-off. It protects the station from digging animals, but it can slow larger worms. moisture and smaller soil organisms can still move through, and worm activity can still build around the lower edge. To keep the screen from becoming a packed plug, add a thin, loose contact layer over it, a little crumbly garden soil or finished compost mixed with dry leaves. Do not press wet clay into the mesh. The goal is contact, not a mud plug. Place the station away from the house foundation, garage door, deck, pet feeding area, or trash cans. Do not build it right where pests already travel. This is the part that decides whether the method feels smart or turns into a problem. A bottomless station is useful only when it is managed like a small compost system, not like an open buffet. The first workers are not worms. This is where many gardeners picture the process wrong. A fresh carrot top or banana peel is still too firm and too raw for worms to handle well. Worms may nibble at softened edges, but they usually move in after microbes and fungi have started the meal. Microbes arrive first. They spread across the wet surface of the scrap. Fungi move into the slower, carbon-rich pieces. Together, they soften the tissue and create a thin living film over the material. You can think of it as a microbial coating, bacteria and fungi growing through the surface as the scrap begins to collapse. That is when the station becomes more interesting to worms. Worms are feeding on softened organic matter and the microbial life growing through it. The material goes through the worm's gut, mixes with minerals and microbes, and comes out as castings, darker, finer, and easier for the surrounding soil to hold. This is why the station needs both wet scraps and dry structure. The wet scraps feed the fast microbial stage. The dry carbon gives the pile air spaces and a slower material for fungi to colonize. Without that structure, wet food presses together into slime. Oxygen disappears. The smell shifts from earthy to rotten. Anaerobic simply means oxygen is missing. You do not need a lab test to notice it. Rotten egg, swamp, garbage, or sour sludge means the station is too wet, too packed, or too sealed. That is not a healthy compost pathway. When the process stays aerobic, the physical signs are different. Scraps soften without turning foul. Dry leaves go limp. Cardboard darkens and bends. White fungal threads may appear under damp carbon. Worm castings may collect around the lower edge. The change is small, but it is real. Food enters. Microbes soften it. Fungi open the tougher material. Worms process the softened layer. Castings and crumbs begin to blend with the soil around the station. Start with one station, not 5, not the whole garden. Choose one established bed or soil-building corner where you can watch the process for 30 to 60 days. Avoid fresh seedling rows, avoid tiny containers, avoid areas right against the house. Dig a shallow hole or trench 4 to 6 inches deep so the lower rim of the container sits below the soil surface. In pest-heavy areas, fasten quarter-inch hardware cloth across the bottom opening before setting the container into that hole. In lower-risk areas, the open bottom can sit directly on the soil. Either way, firm the soil around the outside edge and add a secure, ventilated lid. If you used hardware cloth, do not drop food scraps straight onto bare mesh. Add a small handful of crumbly garden soil or finished compost directly over the screen first. Mix it with a few dry leaves. This creates a loose contact layer, so the mesh does not start as a cold metal barrier with wet scraps pressing into it. Before the first food layer, place a loose handful of dry carbon inside. Dry leaves, shredded plain cardboard, straw, or old mulch all work. The job is not to add bulk for no reason. The job is to keep air in the mix. Then add a layer of kitchen-sourced plant scraps, no more than 2 inches thick. Use vegetable peels, fruit scraps in small handfuls, soft greens, and coffee grounds as a light dusting. Cut large scraps smaller. A whole melon rind can sit there for weeks. Smaller pieces expose more surface, giving microbes more places to start. Now cover that food layer completely. No food should be visible from above. If you can see a peel, pests can smell it. Cover first, then close the lid. Keep these materials out of this simple station. Meat, fish, bones, dairy, grease, oily cooked food, salty leftovers, pet waste, glossy cardboard, tape, plastic, diseased plant material, faded flowers, and garden trimmings. That last part matters. This is a cool, small compost station sitting inside a living bed. It is not a hot compost pile, reaching temperatures high enough to kill diseases or pests hidden in your garden waste. Faded flowers and soft trimmings may carry hidden fungal spores, insect eggs, powdery mildew, or other problems that are hard for a beginner to spot. Keep garden waste out of this container. Stick to kitchen-sourced plant scraps and clean, dry carbon. Used coffee grounds are allowed, but only lightly. They should look like pepper sprinkled through the layer, not a black blanket. A black blanket dries into a crust. A light dusting disappears into the compost path. If you include eggshells, use finely powdered eggshells, not large crushed pieces. Big shell fragments can sit in a cool station for months. Fine powder spreads through the moist material more evenly and gives worms a smaller mineral grit to work with, but do not treat it like fast plant medicine. Calcium movement through soil and into a plant depends on moisture, roots, and the plant's own transport system. Do not expect eggshell powder in this station to fix a tomato's blossom end rot next week. Treat it as long-term mineral grit, not emergency medicine. Do not pour strong fermented liquids into this station unless you have a separate tested dilution plan. Rice water, banana ferments, yeast mixtures, and milk-based mixtures need their own rules. This method works best when it stays simple. Plant scraps, dry carbon, soil contact, cover, moisture, and time. After adding scraps, check moisture with your hand. The station should feel like a wrung-out sponge. Damp, not dripping. If it is dry and dusty, add a little water. If it is wet and heavy, add another handful of dry leaves or loose carbon and stop feeding it for a while. In the first few hours, the most important sign is not biological. It is setup. Is the rim buried? Is the lid secure but ventilated? Is the food covered? Is there dry material mixed with wet scraps? If those details are wrong, the station can fail before the microbes do anything useful. During days 1 through 7, smell is the main signal. A mild earthy smell is good. A faint sour smell can happen as wet plant material begins to break down. But rotten egg, swamp, or garbage smell means oxygen is missing. Do not keep feeding a station that smells wrong. Soft greens move fast. Lettuce and other tender leaves may collapse into the layer within the first few days. That does not mean the whole station is finished. It only means the easiest material has broken down first. By weeks 2 to 4, tougher materials begin to change. Fruit peels darken. Dry leaves become soft. Cardboard bends instead of snapping. White fungal threads may show under the damp carbon. Worms may appear near the lower edge if the soil is moist enough. In cold soil, everything slows. In dry soil, the system can stall. A banana peel drying into leather is not becoming compost. It is just drying out. By 30 to 60 days, a well-managed station may show stronger physical signs. The volume inside may drop. The lower layer may look darker. If you scratch the soil around the base, it may feel cooler, damper, and more crumbly than the exposed soil nearby. That does not mean the whole bed has transformed. It means one small compost pathway is beginning to work. The timeline is not the promise. The signs are the promise. Smell, softness, shrinkage, fungal threads, worm castings, crumbly soil at the lower edge. Those are the things to watch. The first failure is too much wet material. You will know it by the smell and texture. The scraps look slimy. The layer feels heavy. The smell turns rotten or swampy. This usually means too much food, not enough structure, or not enough oxygen. Do not fix that by adding more scraps. For a mild failure, stop feeding the station. Cover the surface with more dry material. Loosen only the packed top layer with a stick or hand fork, then let the station breathe under a secure, ventilated lid. Do not stir the whole thing into a wet paste. The goal is to open small air paths and dry the surface, not churn the problem deeper. For a heavier failure, where the top still smells wrong after a day or two, add a 1 to 2 inch cap of dry garden soil or finished compost over the wet layer. Then poke several deep holes down through the material with a long stick. Those holes act like small air chimneys. Close the lid and leave it alone for a week or two. No new scraps. No liquid boosters. If the batch is black, slimy, and foul all the way through, do not pretend it is healthy compost. You have 2 safer choices. If you have space and can handle it without spreading the mess through the bed, lift the container, shovel the failed material into a separate compost repair pile or a separate bin, and rebuild it there with plenty of dry carbon and air. Then reset the station with a clean, dry layer. If you do not have space to move it, stop feeding it completely. Cap the material with dry garden soil or finished compost, poke air holes, keep the lid ventilated, and let it sit. Do not plant into that spot. Do not harvest compost from it. Wait until the smell changes back toward earthy before using the station again. The second failure is pest pressure. If the lid is moved, mulch is scratched away, or food is dragged out, the station is not protected enough. Do not just cover it with more leaves and hope. Upgrade the physical barrier. Add hardware cloth if you skipped it. Bury the rim deeper. Add a heavier lid. Move the next station away from structures and animal pathways. If pests are already active in that area, pause food scraps entirely until the setup is secure. The third failure is drying out. Dry stations do not smell bad, but they also do not do much. Scraps become leathery. Worms stay away. The soil around the bucket stays dusty. Do not pull the station out and move it if it is already buried into the bed. Fix the moisture problem where it is. Add a thicker layer of mulch around the outside of the bucket to insulate the soil. Moisten the contents lightly until they feel like a wrung-out sponge. Keep the lid closed so the station holds a little condensation, but make sure the ventilation holes are still open. The fourth failure is root stress. Fresh decomposition should not touch seedling roots. Keep the station offset from tender plants. Let roots find the improved zone later. Do not plant directly into fresh scraps or half-finished material. The fifth failure is expecting too much too soon. This station can support soil building, but it is not instant fertilizer. It will not fix every deficiency. It will not replace every input. It is a small, repeated way to keep organic matter cycling through the bed instead of leaving the property. That limit is not weakness. It is what makes the method safe enough to test. After a month or two, the station may not look dramatic from above. It may still look like a bucket in a bed, with mulch around it and a lid on top. But the important part is at the lower edge. Open it, check the smell, pull back the top layer, look for scraps that have sunk and darkened, look for leaves that no longer feel crisp, look for small castings near the bottom, scratch the soil beside the rim, and squeeze it in your hand. If the smell is clean, the scraps are sinking, and the soil at the lower edge breaks into crumbs. The station is doing its job. The next bowl of vegetable scraps beside the sink does not have to become trash. It also does not have to become a rotten bucket. With a protected bottomless station, dry carbon, a secure lid, and a little patience, those scraps can enter a slow compost pathway that the soil can actually use. Start with one station. Build it so pests cannot take it apart. Feed it lightly. And let the first proof come from the place that matters most, the soil under the rim. And if your station already smells wrong, do not pour in the next homemade liquid you see online. Watch the next video first. We will look at sour ferments, rotten buckets, and how to tell the difference between a compost system that can be corrected and one that should be restarted.